Let's go ahead and get started.
Hello.
Hello. I think this will be a relatively brief meeting today. Let's get right into it. First things first, could I get a designated note taker for today?
I'm happy to do it.
Appreciate that very much. Next up, no new faces is already marked up. I don't think that there are any new faces here, so we can go ahead and jump right into outstanding RFCs. First up, we both are in draft, but first we have decoupled dependencies. It was a very small meeting yesterday, but or not yesterday, last week, but Jan and I had like a 10 and 15-minute long discussion about the next steps when it comes to this RFC. I think that we sort of converged on the idea that the next best step would be a discussion of the actual decoupling part, so the artifact and sort of like how the metadata once decoupled from the build pack is interacted with. So coming up with sort of an interface for how that would look. And then beyond that interface, spending some time discussing like put out the interface, and then, we can mess around with implementation and then solidify on an implementation of the actual sort of best practice, and then, go from there. I haven't had enough time to look into discussing that interface yet. I'm hopefully getting to that later this week. But that was the gist of that conversation. The whole conversation is on the meeting YouTube page, if that's something that you're really interested in. But I think that's a pretty concise rundown of what we're talking about. And then after that, we have proposal to publish multi-arch build packs. Is there any update here, Jericho?
Yeah, no update. So the mentorship program, we're going to mess with BuildKit with Pack. That the application deadlines just closed, I think yesterday or today. So I think that work will start in March. So that's kind of all in kind of like preparation for making this process a little bit easier, hopefully. So, but I haven't had a chance to look at this. So I think it's just gonna have to stay in draft for a little bit.
All good. All right. Well, those are the two RFCs that we currently have open. Is there any questions or discussions about these? Great.
Sorry, I did notice that some of the Java build packs are, I think it was like Belsoft Liberica has ARM64 dependencies, but they're not building ARM64 images. I assume that still works, because if you're building from GitHub and you're cloning the release somehow, I don't really know how that works, how you can provide ARM64 dependencies and not create ARM64 build pack images.
Yeah. I don't know that I have a good answer for you. Maybe maybe it was easier to get the dependencies in place before the cross compilation logic, and so they just did that, and then they're going to do the cross compilation logic next.
Okay.
I don't know. That might be that's probably something that's more worth reaching out to Dan and Anthony and David about.
Okay, that's cool. Sounds good.
Yes. Okay, we can move on to the next parts of this. Next up, we have CNB updates or questions. Does anyone have anything for this column? I guess getting close to closing on the application for mentorship is probably a fair update.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to be like choosing, we can only choose one, so we'll choose somebody. And I think I'm going to meet with Juan and Natalie at some point this week to kind of talk about that stuff. But once that project gets started, I think we're going to get a lot of traction. So I'm excited about that.
It's for my benefit. That's a program where like some people apply to be mentored or. Okay, so they're like,
Yeah.
hey, I want to do some work, and then like you choose one of the people, and then they get extra mentoring along the way.
Yeah, the CNCF has like a bunch of mentorships, and I think a lot of open source community projects like will create one per round. And
Okay.
so, I mean, honestly, I just got kind of involved by joining the CNB working group meetings, and they were like, "Hey, we're doing this," and I was interested, and it just seemed like a good way to kind of get community involvement and move forward some of the initiatives we're all trying to kind of move forward on. I mean, actually, I don't know if Paketo is Paketo. It's like Cloud Foundry is part of CNCF, isn't that right? Or am I wrong about that?
Part of the Linux Foundation. I think that
Okay.
the CFF is its own body.
Okay.
But the upstreams are CNCF, right?
I think so, but yeah, I'm not sure. Go ahead.
So I'm not sure about the exact organizational structure, to be honest with you.
So I guess like I can chat with the organizers of that, but if Paketo could participate, would you guys be interested in doing something like that? Or is this like we don't necessarily have any huge projects we're trying to push forward? I guess if there's any interest, let me know and I can like bring it up and find out. That's what I'm trying to say.
Sure. Any other CMB updates? No. Project updates. Pretty minor one. Well, I say minor. We had basically a single user push through Go Workspaces, which has been a feature for a little while. But we hadn't implemented it, and so we had an open source user who implemented it fully and documented it, and it's live. It has documentation on the website, everything like that. So if you're an avid Go user looking to use Go Workspaces, congrats! You can now do that with Paketo Buildpacks. All right. I don't see any open mic questions. Are there any open mic questions or discussion topics that people would like to have before we conclude this meeting?
I haven't put anything there, but I was gonna just chat about my mega Slack messages in the Node.js channel. But anyone can go first if there's something else they want to talk about.
You're good.
Okay, cool. So let me see. I don't think there's been any responses yet, right? No, okay, that's fine. So I don't know if anybody remembers why why symbolic links were added to this, but it seemed like I remember looking through the Paketo Node.js Slack channel and like seeing threads about symlinks and had to be done this way for this reason or that. It seems like that's the main issue, and I'm just wondering if like, is it even feasible to like remove the symlink part of how the build pack works? Just kind of putting thoughts out there, and also like, is this on the Node.js community's radar? This whole like standalone feature that Next.js is doing to make images smaller seems like really nice feature because the images are huge otherwise.
So
Go ahead.
go ahead. The symlink, the symlinking issue, I guess not issue, but the reason symlinks we symlink the node modules directory is because between builds, node modules typically don't change that much. And so on a rebuild, it is really punishing if you have to, like reinstall all of your node modules. So the way that we got around this in the original design was we effectively installed all your node modules, took a cache of your relevant directories and then moved that to a cacheable layer, so that in a rebuild, what you can do is you can just symlink to that node modules directory in that cached layer. And then, like the rebuild is essentially free, because you can do all sorts of stuff, right? You can shift other layers underneath that. You don't have to like the rebuild penalty is lower. I think we do that mainly so that like you don't have to like spend time like I guess like one solution around this is like we could have like a pure cache layer of the node modules and we could do the same checks. But every build, what we'd have to do is we'd have to copy all of the node modules into a central area back into the node modules app in your workspace. And that doesn't sound like a problem until, like I've audited node apps with, once you get all the dependencies and the transient dependencies and all that, it can be like, 10,000, 15,000 different like files that you have to copy. And that's just a huge IO hit to take during a rebuild. So that's why we do the symlinking.
Okay.
I don't know much about this like standalone processor that you're pointed out. I'm unfortunately not the biggest node head around, but I would say that if it's something that's interesting and potentially like a way of moving forward, we could find ways of disabling that functionality and reverting to the second strategy that I mentioned. But I don't know what the cost benefit of that is, and I don't have I don't still have the strongest wrap of the architecture of that build pack as it stands.
I'm just back from vacation this morning, so I haven't read any of the messages. So in terms of context, how does the symlink get in the way?
So I'll just kind of explain generally that the standalone thing. So the way that the Next.js standalone feature works is it looks for your node modules directory, and then if it finds it, it will then just extract only the bare minimum stuff out of there and create another copy of the node modules directory somewhere else in their kind of the output of when you're building your app. It creates these like all these files, and it creates a node modules directory that's just bare minimum. But when your node modules directory is a symbolic link, it just copies the symbolic link. So when I'm using Pack to build a container, and I go and look at that kind of output created by Next.js, it creates this node modules directory, but it's really just another symbolic link to the symbolic link that node modules is pointing to.
Sorry, this is my ignorance. I can fall apart a little bit on this exact how the restructuring works. Shouldn't the copy of the symbolic link still point to the original source and be resolvable?
The problem is that they check if it's a symbolic link.
Oh,
They're not.
okay.
That's why. So I know I was like, why can't you just follow it, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, like, yeah, I feel like the way around it is to somehow disable symbolic links, or at least on demand, like if a user wants to disable them for whatever reason. But then there's the implications of like how does that work? And the other thing I was wondering about is like, could we use? Well, first of all, can you use a different mount point? Like instead of using layer something something. I'm sure there's a reason in like a standard where you're doing it that way, but like could you mount the node modules to /workspace/node modules, and there would be no need to move stuff around at all, potentially.
I don't know how you would preserve that between builds, right? Like, because the thing is that's the real rub, right? Like that you want to preserve this between builds. We also like the node modules build pack does some frankly insane logic where like if you have build set, we actually install your dev dependencies during build time, and then we also like install the whatever you've actually set your environment for runtime, so that you have all of your dev dependencies available during the build. And so we actually create like two separate node modules layers at any given time, and then link to one during build, and then create a launch time link to the one that will exist at runtime.
Yeah.
So like that there's some I there's some kind of ludicrous logic happening there. And I would love if I could just like mark something in the workspace to be like, yeah, cache this, and then do magic for me, and then I don't have to worry about this ever again. But as far as I can tell, I don't know that you can do that. Um, and maybe I'm
Okay.
out of date on the spec a little bit, but like stuff in the workspace is like pretty sacred when it comes to like either being provided at runtime or having stuff put in there during build, and it has to be put there like consciously.
Okay. Yeah.
And they make this, so they're basically like extracting just what they think they need um to run. Is that the standalone? Like,
Yes.
so it's like, and so if it does the symlink, the downs, I'm just understanding like the downside of the way it works today is that you end up with a container that's bigger than you need because it's got all this, all the things, all the extra things. Is that the?
Right. Yeah. Like the whole standalone feature doesn't actually do anything when node modules is a symlink. It just creates another symlink to the node modules. So if you were trying to make your node modules smaller, you can't do that because of the symlink.
How does this do this over just like a standard like prune? Is it just aggressive for like particular application set? Is that the idea?
So I'm not sure that they're running prune. Like they have an example. I don't know if I think I posted it in the Slack channel. I don't know that they run prune.
I guess my question is like how is this like a larger optimization over just like npm or something like that? I mean, I understand that it's grabbing stuff, but like I don't understand how they're making the executive decision over something just like the native node package manager.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, that's a good question. So first of all, I'm not a
Yeah,
node
yeah,
developer.
yeah.
I'm literally learning as I go here. I think like their approach was okay. We're just going to, after you've built your app, we're going to go and just make your image smaller versus making people go and update all their dependencies and like trim things. Like I've seen so many blog posts where we're like, we're going to make our images smaller and do all this stuff, but it takes a lot of developer work to like plan for that. But they're saying, hey, you're using Next.js and we've got this cool little feature here that's going to make your image smaller. Just use this output format and then we'll create another node modules. So I think that all they're doing is really, let me just, sorry.
I just pasted in the chat. Like basically they say they're doing static analysis based on your pages to figure out what you need, the subset of what you need versus what's in the dependencies.
Yeah. And I have a Docker file that they provide. I mean, it's on their website. I can put it, I have to find it, but I can post it. But I don't see NPM prune being run at all.
That's sorry. My question was not do they run prune and more of like trying to understand what they do over just running like an npm prune or something like that.
Says
Which
they use Vercel NFT to statically analyze.
Yeah.
And
I guess the other part of this is this applies if you're doing something with Next.js, right? Like, so it is specifically for this project. It's not out. So like, I guess I would say it's like, it's not outside the realm of possibility for us to look into supporting something like this or looking into it in general. I think that we would have to come up with what we'd have to do is we'd have to like kind of rework and come up with a clever solution for how we deal with node modules. And maybe the answer is like, yeah, having an opt-out is maybe the right thing to do, of like, I don't know, maybe having symlinks in your node modules can cause other problems because, symlinks don't always work as well as you would hope. And you know, some things just completely don't respect symlinks at all. C.net if you ever want to go down that rabbit hole. But so maybe that's the solution, but like maybe having a more generalized solution may not be. I think that might be a bit more difficult, especially if we're supporting this for Next.js. Now, if we saw like everyone's like, man, this thing that Next.js is doing is really cool, and we're all going to start picking up and doing it, then we would probably want to implement that. But maybe just having a forcing a way to force standard behavior might be the right way to go.
My other question too is why, like, what's wrong with them doing this if there is a symlink?
Well, that was another thing I was gonna like. I'm basically reaching out to the Paketo community because that's who I work with primarily. But
Sure.
I'm also considering talking to them and being like, hey, can we have a follow symlink option you can pass or environment variable you can set so that you can still get this benefit even if you're using symlinks. I'm not sure why they made that decision. Maybe it's because they're assuming maybe it's a support Paketo. I have no idea. Maybe that like they had some issue and they decided they were going to have that. The other thing I was going to ask about is I don't know, I can't remember how hard links work, but like could we use a hard link instead during the build? Like if hard links are at the directory level, then if you just had a hard link and you did all your work, but it was really always getting written to the layer directory that's a volume, then wouldn't that solve this problem without the need for symlinks and no one would know they're a symlink? It's a hard link. Am I wrong about that? Any thoughts on that?
So I think the thing is that we symlink the entire directory, right? Like it's not that we symlink the individual things in the directory, but we symlink the whole directory. And so we would, I guess, like I don't know, I'd have to. This would be something I'd have to look into all over again. But like, I think what you're proposing is like we'd have to go into the node modules directory and hard link everything in from one directory into a static place. And I think that's a little bit. There's a potential to be less robust, but I don't remember. That's an interesting call. I don't know. I also don't know that hard links actually reduce the size in the same way. There's a very slim difference between like hard link and a copy, and I can't remember what it is, and so I'd have to go read some man pages somewhere.
I just looked it up. Hard links won't work for directories, so it's not a viable solution. Right.
I know somebody in the Node, like one of the Node collaborators who works at Vercel. If it helps, I could send an email sort of asking if he knows somebody who could help answer the question as to why it's.
Sure. I mean, like
why they do what they do, right?
Yeah. I mean, like, you've got your title says Node.js project. Clearly, you know more about Node than I do. So I'll take any help that I can get, honestly. Just to kind of start the conversation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll start a thread that just tries to, give a little. I'll read your stuff. Start a thread with Evan. Anyway, with the right person, just saying like, hey, we're working on this on the Paketo side. Can you, if it's not you, can you point us to somebody who might know why it's like symlinks, and maybe we'll just learn something new that says, yeah, okay, they do that because of X or Y, and take us to the next step.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good. Cool. All right. Well, yeah. Thank you for chatting about this and helping kind of like talk through how to even approach this problem. And yeah, we'll see. I mean, I'm also working with the developers who are interested in using this kind of feature, and I don't know how much traction there is with Next.js, but like it seems like everyone's looking at it these days as a framework, and if it gains popularity and people want to make their image sizes smaller, I might just be the first.
It's one of the ones with lots of buzz out there. So yeah.
Sorry, but by all means, I'm not saying that this isn't necessarily this isn't a valuable feature or won't become like a standard build process, but just like out of the blue in terms of like just sort of figuring out what everything entails is probably where I would want to go before doing any drastic implementation shifts.
Cool. Okay. Well, yeah, that's all I had. Thank you for the discussion. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Are there any other discussion topics that people would like to chat about?
Just Jericho, do I have your email? I'm not sure I have your email address.
I will send it to you through Paketo Slack.
Okay, perfect. Thanks.
It's Michael, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I guess I should have renamed myself.
I mean, I think I know. I was just like making sure.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I end up starting a bunch of the node projects Zoom meetings, so I'm almost always the node person, but I always rename myself, but obviously not this time.
Nice. Well, it's good to have some kind of crossover here. So thank you for helping that.
Yeah, see if we can find the right people.
Alrighty. Well, thank you all so much for coming.
Likewise. All right, guys.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.